Call the meeting to order. Paul, roll call, please.
All right.
14 feet, okay.
John Mead,
Here.
Mim Evans,
Here.
Commissioner Slivka,
Here.
Commissioner Kosrig,
Here.
Commissioner DeBates,
Here.
Commissioner Rittenhouse,
Here.
Chairman Stocking.
Here.
Thank you.
All right, we have a quorum. Next is the approval of the agenda for this evening's meeting. Have a motion.
Move to approve.
Second.
Moving second, all in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? And next item is the approval of minutes of December 12th, 2019 meeting.
Move to approve. Second.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, so we have one public hearing item on our agenda this evening. Since there isn't nobody here, I'll just swear Paul in because you're the only one giving testimony.
Yeah, just read what it is.
Do you
yeah.
swear to affirm to tell the testimony you're about to give is the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
All right, thank you.
If you
All
want to
right.
introduce that, and I'll take. the
Yeah, I'll
contents.
introduce it. So the public hearing is, we have a number of text zoning ordinance text amendments this evening. Request for a text amendment to Title 11 zoning of the Geneva Municipal Code related to the following accessory structures: pergolas, gazebos, trellises, summer houses, arbors, and shade sails. The proposed zoning text ordinance text amendments are as follows. Chapter 2, definition of words and terms defining the accessory structures. Chapter 3, Section 11-3-3, accessory buildings and uses related to the regulations for certain accessory structures. And Chapter 15, zoning illustrations, accessory structures related to illustrating certain accessory structures. And the applicant is City of Geneva. So Paul, I guess you're going to walk us through it.
Yeah, first I'll say what the contents of our file is the application for a zoning ordinance text amendment submitted by the Community Development Department, a staff report from the Community Development Department to the Planning and Zoning Commission summarizing the request and providing staff's analysis dated January 9, 2020. Make a PowerPoint presentation about tonight's public hearing, and we have a certificate of publication from the Daily Herald for the legal notice that was published on December 23rd, 2019 for tonight's public hearing. All right, as you introduced already, that we're coming forward as we have time, we try to fit in these text amendments, and this one tonight is regarding, we talked about pergolas, gazebos, trellises, summer houses, arbors, shade sails. And what we want to do is, we get a lot of requests, or some requests from time to time, I should say, and we really, a lot of our regulations don't address this. We just don't have, well, what's the regulation for shade sails, or what's the regulation for pergolas that we're seeing now? And so we've said we need to go and get some regulations or see what's reasonable here. So I make a presentation. It's going to affect 3 chapters. The first chapter is on the definitions, and then the second, chapter 3 is actually the main chapter, was the regulations and what yard it's allowed in, and then the other chapter, chapter 15, is just an illustration, so we all know that we're talking about the same thing, because people often confuse different items like that. So with this, first of all, I'll begin to show you what we have, so that I said some of the issues we get into is that there isn't any clear definitions of this in the accessory structures, and that people often misinterpret these structures, and that no regulations that are particularly address these structures. So let's see. Stop here. There we go. I think I might have to. Huh.
I don't see a mouse at all.
I don't know, just a minute on my slides. I don't know, it's working for me, but not for that. Well, shoot. I wonder what the, okay. I'll just take a minute here and switch it up. These displays.
Just frozen.
All right, there we go. Sorry about that. Tried to have it work differently. As we explained what the issues are, so I hope to define each of these structures and provide a photograph to show what that is, and then what regulations we'd have in Chapter 3. So, first of all, I wanted to discuss what an arbor is. By our definition, it's a covered tunnel structure with the trellis side panels for the support of climbing plants and vines, and may be freestanding or incorporated as part of a fence. Then we also refer to the illustration for each one of this. So this is our typical pose of what an arbor is, a little bit more than a trellis. And then we have a trellis, which is, by our definition, I'm sorry, I'll do it this way. Is an individual flat panel framework of light wooden or metal bars intended for the support of climbing plants and vines attached to a wall, open, unenclosed porch, or between the soffit and finished grade. A trellis may also be freestanding, and also we have an illustration that we'll be providing for that. So it can be in the, just open in a yard, but most of the time you see it attached to a structure. Next up is a pergola. Is a parallel colonnade consisting of posts, pillars, and columns supporting on an open roof structure composed of girders and cross rafters that may support climbing plants or vines. Our next is gazebo, is an open-air structure with a solid roof supported on posts and columns. And then we also have a summer house, a gazebo with removable or permanent enclosure panels and doors made of screening or glass. And finally, we have shade sails, an unenclosed fabric structure designed to provide temporary or permanent shade that may be attached to posts, buildings, or surrounding structures. So with that, that's the definitions, and these are the photographs that we were going to be proposing that we add to the illustration chapter. And then now, as far as the regulations are concerned, first we're going to go through the attached accessory structures and what the changes are. So for pergolas, we're recommending that they're allowed up to 10 feet above grade or paved surface. Pergolas may extend up to 3 feet into the required setback, except in the commercial district, the DCM, DRSCM, and the RSPS, which is the public school district, the downtown, and the residentially scaled commercial, which may extend the property line in the street setback. No permanent lighting shall be permitted, and only seasonal inline and low watt lighting is allowed. Duplex outlets are allowed, and manually retractable fabric panels may be installed between the girders and/or cross rafters for the purpose of sun shading. Permanent or semi-permanent vertical panels.
Would you allow motorized retractable?
I think so. I don't know why we wouldn't.
Manually retractable, but
Yeah.
just because it may have more bulky, whatever, engine or motor
I
associated.
guess we
with it.
said manual. I don't know why the other.
Yeah, you might want, anyway, go ahead, I just
Okay.
brought that out.
No, that's fine. Manually retractable. I don't know
Say
if that could be
retractable.
powered.
Just retractable.
Just take
and
out
then
manually.
Just take that out.
Okay.
That way they can have a motorized one, and it's fine. We don't have to come before us to.
Yeah. Retractable. Okay. All right. So if we're saying this is allowed in the street yard, the side yard, in there, if you know, this is for the street yard, the side yard, and the rear yard, so allowed in all of those. Next up is shade sails. Now, these are only obviously the attached structures that we're talking about, attached accessory structures, allowed in any yard except the front yard. Total area of the shade sail shall not exceed the area of the associated outdoor seating area. Maximum height is allowed no higher than the highest eave of the structure it's attached to. Shade sails shall not contain any graphics. No portion of the shade sail may be located in a public easement. And again, it's allowed in the street yard, the side yard, and the rear yard. here we said, but not in the front yard. As you know, on a corner lot, you have a street yard and a front yard. And so it's not allowed on the smaller of the two is the front yard. So,
It's not where the front door is?
no, not necessarily. A lot of times, I know people think the address is that, and the address should be where the front door is at. And there's actually, in our zoning ordinance, it's, the front yard is the yard that is the smallest on a corner. You know, an interior, it's the front. But on a corner, because it would give you the biggest rear yard, because the definition of a rear yard is opposite of a front yard. So that's why the smaller of the two between two on a corner is the front yard. So,
Wow, that's,
all right, so,
Trivia question.
Why
Yeah,
no,
could have got me on that
why
one.
no graphic?
what's that?
Why no graphics on those?
On shade sale?
Yeah,
This is,
like why not have like, I mean, if
oh,
somebody
no
wanted to have a
graphics.
Cubs logo on
I'm
it.
sorry, no graphics. We don't want it used as advertising. If we get into it as a sign, now we're, yeah, we don't want this to be either advertising whoever's makes the shade sale, or we don't want it used as a sign. So once we allow the graphics, we don't really have too much ability to regulate that. So either you let it all in,
Yeah,
or you don't. And I think the option here is to not do that. I mean, we could, if it's allowed later as a sign, you know how we have awnings and things like that, you can put signage on. But it's generally not in the front, so people would advertise on the side. So I don't know. That's what we'll see. But right now, we don't feel like the graphics should be on these because it would kind of begin to take it over, I think.
If somebody wanted to have an advertisement, they could always ask for a variance, right? Then we would consider it in the normal
I
curve.
was more picturing at somebody's house where it was like a Cubs logo or a
Right,
Sox
yeah.
logo or a, you know,
what about
Yeah.
like stripes
Well,
or
you're-
something?
No.
Graphics?
You're
Yes.
right on, I'm thinking commercially, you're right. I'm not thinking residentially, could somebody do that? Yeah, we could take a look at that, we haven't parsed it down and say, you know, again, that's another thing, residentially, yes, but
Well, yeah, you're
what's
gonna have
the-
problems regulating it as a graphic if it gets into content. So
yeah.
that's where.
And
you're-
again,
where I-
you know, you're the neighbor next to it, you're gonna live with it a long time if you
I
don't
get where
like
you
what-
draw the line and
Yeah,
maybe you just,
it just avoids conflict potentially with the sign ordinance too, where you got this provision, say, well, I want it under this, but then the sign ordinance says no, and so you're gonna have a conflict, so.
Yeah.
Would stripes or designs of some sort be allowed?
I guess I was mainly adding for, looking for like text of a sign, but shall not contain any graphics. So I think we're saying that would be fine to be striped. We're looking at text. Yeah, so it doesn't have to be a solid color. We just don't want, I guess, a sign, used as a sign, so.
If it's text, then something like Brad's talking about would be okay. If you have
just to see.
Is that text?
a C,
Well,
if it's a logo that's an animal,
well, that's what we would consider logos to be signs. You know, if it's a blue C and it's the Cub, or, you know, red, whatever, it's the Cub, you know, then it's recognizable. I'm not saying that would necessarily be the end, but we were mainly thinking commercially that people would try to do that. But if that's something we need to do residentially, allow that. But I think what we're saying is you could do stripes or other types of design, not text, I guess, more.
I have a question about the height. It says
Okay.
no higher than the highest eaves, so, you know, if you had a mid-century house with low eaves, or any ranch house, that's very low because those sails, in order to accomplish what you're trying to
Right.
do, you know, you can't have it as low as the eave and then stretch flat across, because it's gonna hold water. And if you pitch it, then it's gonna be too low and people will hit their heads on it. So, you know, technically, a lot of them are triangular shaped, and there's a pole that'll run up, you know, and the corner will be up here, so that you can accomplish a pitch, so that the
Right.
shade hits the right way. But if it can't go any higher than that thing, you're not gonna be able to pitch it on a low house. You know, it's fine if you have a two-story house, because that's
Right.
it says the highest, eave, but on a ranch.
We don't want it to be higher than the principal structure. You know, that's one of the things with an accessory structure.
I think that's okay, not higher than the principal structure, but it says higher than the highest eave.
Right.
So if it's only eave height, and, you know, and a typical eave height on a ranch house might only be 8, 9, 10 feet.
About the-
And then you've got to pitch it, you've got to pitch that sail to get the shade and to keep the water
Right.
off of it.
Right.
Now you're dropping it down to 7 feet, and then people are, you
Right.
know, it's over your patio, and it's like, you know, here's my eave, and here's the end
Yeah.
of my patio. Like the example you're showing, the water can shed, but it's also higher.
We don't want it to be, we don't want it to be over the structure, the principal structure. But I'm thinking if we say then in this case, if you're saying it's lower, would that be under the detached, which is the next section? Should we allow a little higher height? But if you're gonna attach it to the structure, I mean, say you wanna put it in the house, would you put something on the roof then?
Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking you might
mean-
run a pole. Or-
Right, you would run a pole off the roof then? I mean, that's what
I
I'm
don't
trying to
know.
think of, to get it up higher.
Yeah, I don't
Now you're
know.
above that, but if we go into the detached structure, detached accessory structures, maybe that's the place that we say, maybe we have a little higher height, you know?
But then can they tether it to, you know, can
the
they
house
tether
and
one
another
corner of it
corner.
to the house?
It's attached,
Then it
right.
becomes attached.
Would it work, is the peak considered an eave? I mean, because generally if you're at a gutter line at
That's just
eight,
what
Looked up,
Right.
I looked up eave is where the roof meets
Right.
the wall.
Right,
so then maybe not, maybe redefine it as the highest,
Point of the house.
yeah, the peak of the roof or something.
But in order to attach it to the peak, you'd have to cover the roof with
No,
it.
but not to
No.
be higher than that, you could run a structure
run a
up from
pole
your,
up to
from
as
your
high as the
shingles
peak.
and at 2 points and attach it
Right.
at 1 point or
Yeah.
something.
Okay.
yeah. But see, now the problem we have, and I mean, this is why we're meeting like this, is discuss all these issues that come up. But then, now if you have a 2-story home,
It could
now
be
we
really
say,
there.
you know, or 30, say you're a 35-foot or 34-foot
Right.
home, and now you say, well, I can take it up to
Right, well, but there's
Probably
no.
not very
and now
but
we might
nobody
be able to say,
would.
or, we might say the highest eave, or.
Of a single-story home, or a single-story structure, the highest.
Or the highest point.
Highest
Highest
peak
point on a
of a
single-story
single-story
structure,
structure.
or the highest
eve on something
on a-
over a single.
That
story.
makes sense.
But we want it a little lower than the highest, right? Because as an accessory structure, do you want the sail to be bigger than the home?
I don't think anybody's gonna do that, because realistically, that you're talking about,
You're trying to have
2 stories worth of-
shade,
yeah.
and if you get it too high,
yeah.
you're gonna diminish the effectiveness of the structure, and you're wasting your money.
Yeah.
Okay.
theoretically, right?
I'm
So-
saying that's a little deceiving, because it works there, because that eave is high enough, and, you know, but on the average house, I mean, I can think of a million houses
Yeah.
it wouldn't work on, because in order to pitch it,
All right.
Well, I
And
think
I'm
that
thinking
works
now,
because the
and I understand
other
on
wall is
a,
higher, not because the eave is necessarily higher.
right, but the eave is still pretty high, I mean, enough to get your, you've gotta have headspace, you know, you gotta
Yeah.
have at least 7 feet,
Right.
right? So, on one end of it, if.
So if the other is 8
your
or
eave is
10
only 9
feet.
feet, and you're pitching it down to 7 feet, you know, that's kinda.
Yeah.
It's not a lot of pitch, and then the rain catches, you know, I mean, it's a little pitch, but.
so what kind of language would you look at there then?
I
for-
think what John recommended was, you know, no higher than the highest point of the structure on a 1-story,
The highest eave of the structure,
no, the
No,
highest.
the
Or-
highest point
Highest
on a
point.
single-story structure.
Correct, yes.
And no higher than the eve
On a
on a
2-story.
2-story or higher structure.
Any eave?
Any, I don't know, how do they phrase it in
It
here?
doesn't say that there. I
That-
just
It's,
wondered.
no, it says the highest eve here.
Highest eave.
I can't imagine somebody with a 2-story
I
home
know, it
would.
would be way.
No.
They may cable it up there, but they're gonna start the
Yeah.
fabric
Unless,
down.
Yeah,
what
yeah,
if they
yeah.
had a
I
deck?
mean, it would cover a lot
Something
of
that was
surface.
We have a
elevated.
Yeah, that's what I
If
was
you have
gonna
an
say.
elevated deck, then you could want it on the highest eave.
Right,
Then it
at
would
our
make
home, we have a,
sense.
I mean,
we
that's
have
what they have at
a walk-up
the
basement,
back of,
so,
I can't remember the name of the Mexican restaurant
Yeah,
right
across
here.
the street.
They have sails in back,
yeah.
multi-story building. But there it's attached, I mean, I don't know what it's attached to, I shouldn't say, but I
can't
feel like
picture
it's
it right
attached
now.
to the eaves or right around there.
It may be cables, I can't remember.
Would it make sense, because most people are under 7 feet, to say that the highest point of attachment should be no more than 10 feet from what you're trying to shade?
I guess.
Because then you still can pitch it 2 feet or whatever to.
That's what I was wondering too.
8 feet.
Maybe.
Put a frame at
Yeah.
the edge.
Have 10 feet,
Raise
would
it
that be
some.
enough? Because right, I agree with
Of
you,
course,
7
then
feet.
somebody's gonna have an 11-foot eave, and they're gonna say, so I can't attach that? I have
Yeah,
to-"
right, right.
So-
But we could say.
How about not
eve-
to exceed
Right. We could
something?
either the eve or 10 feet.
Not to be higher than the eve or 10 feet.
Yeah,
That might- 10 feet above the floor of the shaded area, or something to
So you
that.
can
Shade.
still do your elevated
then
deck.
Of grade.
Yep.
The higher of the two would be
Okay.
allowed, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that works. But you're right, I mean, with a single family, you wouldn't be able to do it. It'd be
Maximum
hard
height.
to get one in without the adjustment.
What, did we say 10 feet then? Okay.
That gives you
It gives you some.
Yeah.
enough
higher.
to, if you wanted to drop it 2 feet for rain and water drainage, then you
Yeah.
could.
How many
That's-
people are going to even think that they have to be concerned about regulations on, I mean, personally, if I was going to do something like this on the patio in my
Yeah.
backyard, I wouldn't have even thought about,
I mean, going
I
for a
have
permit.
thought of it, now.
And that's probably going to happen, but at least we have something to rein them in if there is something. But, there are some people that do call us and say, is there a regulation regarding this, or, come in and do it. But you're right, a lot of them wouldn't even think about doing that and
No.
just, screw it in
it's
and
not a
hang it up.
permanent
But,
thing, and it's,
I'm more thinking cranky
Neighbors.
Yeah.
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 Paul, do all these require a permit?
Yes, yes.
Really? Jeez.
I wouldn't even,
Better
I'll
hurry.
be honest, I wouldn't have even thought
I wouldn't have either, not on something
Temporary.
that.
to get a
Hang on, just
permit,
string it
yeah,
up.
to put
I've
up a
actually thought of
shade
that.
above my deck.
I wouldn't
Yeah,
either.
I don't-
Well, or a trellis
Wouldn't
that's mounted against your,
Beyond
like
the
the
set-
trellis we're
setback,
showing
I'm
there.
good.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have
Yeah,
thought about it.
Temporary.
I'll look that up, but I think that we would get for, especially like a pergola or gazebo or something like
Well,
that.
Well, those you would
Oh,
think
I agree,
more,
I
yeah.
agree. I think it's a slippery slope when the city just regulates everything. I do understand the idea of if a guy owns a restaurant and he puts something up with his logo, I think that's wrong to do. But I think you can have regulations on that without having someone to file a permit. I
Okay,
think on a building structure like a summer house or a pergola, I would agree that, you probably do need a permit on that. You should have.
yeah. I mean, some of these,
Maybe the difference is, this is I would think in Chicago, or in the Chicago area, this would be a temporary
Yeah.
structure.
This is
Pergola's
temporary.
permanent.
Right.
This is coming down come October, probably.
yeah, that's what we said, it could be seasonal, right? And especially with the fabric, so you're right. That
But you want to have regulations, so if somebody does complain.
right. And that's where we get
I put a
into,
20-foot pole up off my second floor deck, and I'm catching
yeah.
that stuff. You have something to lean back into.
I think the structures, when we get into a gazebo and maybe a pergola because it could fall or something like that, so that makes a little sense. But maybe not trellises, arbors, and shade sails so much. Summer houses or whatever. I think they probably
Right.
kids playing or whatever, and you're liable to put electricity in these. But these others, the standalone, I can find out for shade sails, trellises, and arbors if that's something that we would, an arbor.
Well, I don't think-
I
we
don't
don't-
know what we would,
It's more
other
of a
than
gar-
where it's at.
it's a
Maybe
garden
they'd say,
Yeah.
I don't typically permit it, so I
I've
don't
put
see
them
it,
up
but we
before.
haven't had that. So, yeah, maybe it's such that.
I don't think that we require permits for anything that's not, on a
Structure.
foundation.
Well, fence.
A fence,
Yeah, but that doesn't go into the ground. But I mean, you're allowed to have a garden shed up to a certain size as long as it's not, right?
Yeah,
As long as it
just where
doesn't
you
have
can
a
put it,
foundation
right.
under it.
And you may be
So-
right.
I mean, a
don't-
trellis, a
The
arbor.
building side does that. I would do the regulations, but I don't do the permitting. And they came up with, we don't have any regulations regarding this, and I think it's for a permit. And so that's kind of where some of this came from. And, how to, with the regulations, but it doesn't necessarily mean that we have to have a permit for everything. So I will double check that.
So to distill what we just said down, are
Sure.
you thinking that trellises, arbors, and shade sails would not be permitted, but they would have regulations? If
Right.
a neighbor or anybody else brought that into question, you could lean into that to say, you know what, you got a 15-foot arbor here, it's but the maximum you can have is 10.
Correct.
And your neighbors have complained, and
Correct. But we get, one of the things I think about is like exempt signs. They're kind of the same thing. It's exempt. You don't need a permit. But how do we know it meets the standard? It's, one thing is not to charge a fee, but the other thing is to review it to say, yes, it meets the standard. And some of these, maybe we wouldn't. Maybe it's not worth the time, for the things. But others, you think about, well, yeah, it's exempt, but who is anybody checking if it's not? You submit, yep, you're fine, you meet, the standard. So anyway, so that's what we can find out. But I would imagine you're right on when we talk about shade sails and arbors and stuff like that, that it's probably not worth our time. And then we could say, there's the regulation if something gets out of line, so.
I would also want to know, under pergola, it says no permanent lighting shall be permitted. And, I mean, if they're submitting drawings to get a permit and it's attached to the house, I would think people probably would want to put some permanent lighting under there, if it's over their patio
why would you?
for evenings. And by putting that in there, I wonder if we're making them then come and get a variance for something.
I think that might be part of it is if it's not permanent, then maybe there's not a permit. We don't need an electric permit or
But a
something.
pergola is permanent, and it is.
Yeah, but the light,
And you
the
have lighting
electricity,
allowed in
now you're running electricity out to it.
Well, but you're allowing duplex outlets, so you're running
Yeah,
electricity
I'm
out there
sorry.
Just on the
anyway.
electricity part of
Yeah,
that,
you're
too.
right.
Even low wattage lighting can be permanent, right?
Well, I think it says
says
seasonal.
only
But you're right, we are allowing the outlets, and I think we were thinking seasonal to have it lit up so it isn't lit up all year. I think that was the thing.
I think a pergola is a very permanent structure, and it's over your patio,
Yes.
and you want to flip a light on and be able to be out there and not have to plug things in and out.
Like
And
on
if
a
you're-
48-degree January day, you might want to be out there.
Well, yeah,
So you
I
could
think
have lighting, it's just plugged into obviously the outlet, instead of having it permanently wired. And maybe that gets into the wiring of the structure itself too, so. Because you would still be able to have the lighting, it's just not a permanent thing. And maybe that's also, for the historic district, some of these things, like, as long as you can take it out. If it's not permanent, then it's a
don't-
lot more forgivable that you can allow these things on a temporary basis. But if it's gonna be lit the full time,
I don't know, I just think that if I'm dumping $10,000 into a pergola that's attached to my house, I want a light switch from the inside of the house to turn the light on and off, so I
Yeah.
can go out there and use my grill or do whatever I do under my pergola.
yeah.
I mean,
we have
it's a
that
pretty
at our
ex-
house, but it's lights strung around
I
and plugged
understand,
in, yeah.
I just think that I think it's kind of not a nice rule. I think they should be able to have permanent lighting.
I would agree with that. And the other thing, for the pergola, I think that 10 feet is very discretionary.
You mean the shade sail?
Shade sail.
No,
No, on the pergola, I'm sorry.
10 feet above grade, it says.
10 feet above grade, is that the highest part of the pergola?
No, that'd be, most pergolas are, well, given some grade, but most pergolas are pretty level.
Pergolas are level, but you have different layers of the top
Right.
of the pergola.
The top,
The stringers that go
So it's
across.
10 feet? It's not a
yeah.
lot.
No, that is not a lot at all.
It's not.
I think that's what we see as typical.
I don't think you can say that, because if you've got a house that's, and you've got 3 steps coming out of the house, now the door is already, the door is already 8 feet high. That gives you a foot of clearance. If you've got 2x10 rafters, that's not much.
But if you think of a basketball
I-
hoop is 10 feet high,
I bet you that's higher than 10 feet, what you're showing right there.
no, I think it looks higher than 10 feet, but I don't think it is. I mean,
I guess the question I have though, Paul, is are we running into a situation where, again, people are taxpayers, they want to build a pergola.
Right.
And the regulation is 10 feet. Do they then have to go, I guess they have to go in front of to get a
Variance.
variance?
but and obviously if we saw something like that, like we did with porches in the downtown, that we begin to say, okay, we need to change this. You know what? It doesn't make any sense. And it could even come from this group to say, you know what? Why don't we begin to look at that but I think we tried to pick a typical height for a pergola. again, so it isn't dominating.
I'm kind of with Terry on this because I'm picturing a friend's home. He built his own pergola. He's on a deck.
Right.
So there's his back door opens out into the pergola, which is great. It looks awesome. And then off the pergola is at least 3 or 4 steps down into the yard. And it's probably, I mean, I just can't imagine. I think it's probably above 10 feet off of grade. Sure. You know?
Well,
it
yeah,
says-
and what we're
it says-
saying-
11 or 12. It's not like huge, but
It says 10 feet above grade or paved surface. Maybe it should say
Well,
or
and that's what
covered
we're trying to
surface.
say. It's whatever the pergola sits on. If if it goes down and the house is up, we're not saying from the finished floor level of the house. We're saying from the surface that the pergola's on could be 10 feet high or whatever. But I think the other thought we had is the first story. It's usually the 10 feet is a pretty good first story. And most doors are about 6.5, 7 feet high. So you're still 3 to 4 feet above that coming out of a door.
I don't, I'm picturing a home like John's and older Victorian, I don't know. I could see where somebody, I don't know why we have to put a feet thing on there. I think it should be whatever they want it to be, as long as it meets building code requirements.
It shouldn't say paved surface. It
I was
should
just going to say that too,
has
because
to
his
say-
is not paved.
Covered
It's-
surface or.
Yeah,
Yeah, now here's a pergola that I took a picture of. This is on James Street. Lincoln, I think it's near Lincoln. And so,
that one, yeah.
I mean, to me, if you look at the first store, this is in the front.
It's lovely for that home, but it's not gonna work
so-
on every house. That's the
And
point.
that's probably 12 feet off of the grade.
Yeah.
But at 10 foot from that porch level, we're not going
maybe,
on,
maybe.
if there was a
10 or
porch and they
11.
put it on top of the porch, I could see that being 10 feet. And again, this is existing in the, this is one that, that's built, and now we say, okay, what are the regulations we have? So,
Would they be out of code?
I don't know without measuring it, I
It's a
think
corner lot, isn't it?
Yeah.
it is. And street, as long as they're not projecting
Front
into
yard,
to the front, yeah. As long as they're not in front of the.
it looks like the front.
I know, that might be one of the concerns is that, because they can go to the side, but as far as into the front, you're right, that it might be,
Often pergolas also are, porticocheres where cars drive under them. And on a Victorian home, it would be, or that type of home, it'd be much higher than
well,
that.
you're thinking of a carport as opposed to
But if it's
a
built like
pergola.
that, that's a pergola.
Right, but I think that, I would think we'd have a different definition of, I mean, if somebody's gonna put their car underneath it, I think we would consider that to be a carport, not a pergola.
Is there a regulation for how high the roof of a porch can be, if you were calling it a roof?
How high the roof of a
Screened
porch?
porch or something?
Yeah.
No.
Because isn't this just like the
No,
roof?
just over the, right.
So isn't this just another form of a roof over a porch?
It can be, but it can also be, as with the detached, not attached to a porch.
No, but we're talking about it attached. So I'm looking at that and I'm thinking, what's the difference between that and a front porch? There's not much. Because I'm also wondering why
It's
can't
not
it be?
covered, generally not covered. They have a fabric you can put over it, but yeah.
It's not solid, but aesthetically, to me,
Has
it's
that-
the
yes.
same. I
It's a
mean, if I'm
structure.
driving down the street, I don't care if it's covered or not. So I'm wondering why it can't be in the front. Are we saying these can't be in the front of a house?
I mean, this
Yeah,
looks lovely, right?
Yeah, I don't object to somebody having the equivalent of their front porch
Streets.
with that as the roof instead of a shingled roof. Not a problem to
With the
me.
porch right next to it.
Yeah,
could see it.
right, so that's what I'm thinking. What if that pergola ran across the front? It wouldn't be a problem.
I think, Paul, you may want to differentiate between a freestanding pergola
Right.
and a attached pergola.
And we do have, I mean, there is, this is the attached, and then the next section is the
Right,
detached.
so we're saying the rules that are here for attached are maybe too restrictive, if it's attached. Because it's really more like a porch then. So you should have the same freedom as you would for a porch, including putting it in the front.
Right, it's not covered.
Probably applies to a pergola, but not a gazebo per se, right?
No, or that shade sail thing,
Right.
I don't think that belongs in the front of a house necessarily, but this to me is just a different form of a roof on a front porch.
Now, again, some of the things that, when we're looking at it, a lot of times we're probably looking at it more commercially too. is having this as, becomes an entrance all the way out, become, from a commercial building, it becomes,
Why would it be a problem on a commercial building?
I don't see it as a problem at all.
No, I don't either.
I see it as a bigger problem if we restrict it, because, I mean, that winery, for example, on Third Street that they're, that's on that Victorian, white
Right.
building, Dr. Haddle's building.
Right.
I could see where they could build a pergola off the front of one of those, or the side door, or the front doors there, and I think it'd be perfectly lovely.
well, one of the things, and if we exclude the historic district, then that's a different question. And
Well,
I
that's
think
up to them.
I think some of this that we did have, we haven't called it out, like not allowed in the historic district and all that, but that, if we do that, then again, putting these pergolas in front of historic buildings in the front yard, that's another reason why we were looking at that, is it could take away from the historic context of the home.
I think that's up to HPC to
HPC would
decide.
deal
Yeah.
with that, wouldn't they?
Yeah, I'm not worried about that.
Because now we're writing the rules for people because we're afraid of the historic, but what about the people that don't live in the historic district, or the buildings that don't fall into that?
All right.
Yeah, I don't differentiate these from porches.
All right,
Paul.
so, but how close would you allow these then? So it's attached,
Be the
so it
same-
has to
same
meet
as a
the
front
same as,
porch.
okay,
Front porch.
okay,
Whatever
okay,
applies to a
allowed in the
porch.
front.
So what you're asking to change here is the permitted yard location would include F for front, right? Or do
Yeah.
we don't really have an
There's
F
no
anywhere.
column for that.
Oh, okay, we just have to change, wait for pergolas. Okay, allowed up to 10, okay. It was a shade sail that we don't allow in the front.
Right.
This is allowed in the
That's fine.
street, so I'm sorry. We were confusing that with the shade sail was not in the front yard, but the pergola is allowed. In this instance, when we say street yard, it could mean both of them.
Between two
So-
trellis, between two windows.
Well, shade sail says street yard too, so.
Right, but that's a different structure. I mean,
Except the front yard.
then having that in the front yard, I think that we would think that that's not appropriate to
Where
have it
does
in
it
the
say
front
that?
yard.
It doesn't say
But
that, though.
I guess in looking at obviously a little closer, is to say, we are allowing this in the street yard.
Oh, yes, I see it, okay.
Yeah.
Wait, but you said I'm sorry, I might have missed the beginning of that, but you said street yard and front yard were not the same thing.
Correct. A front yard is a street yard, but not, I'm sorry,
But the smaller of the
But
two.
then anything we're saying is allowed in the street yard is also allowed in the front yard?
no. Well, I'm sorry.
Except for shade sales.
Except for
Shade sales, correct.
Okay, so all the rest of this stuff could go in the front yard?
If it says ST for street, yes.
Okay.
Yes, that's correct.
Because
All right, I like that.
So the only thing in here that we have is, the playhouses, gazebos, which we're striking because this is in the attached section.
Right.
And these aren't attached, so that was the reason I was gonna let you know that we're taking that out. So, okay, so we're agreeing so allowing lighting, permanent lighting in the pergola, and allowing it to be, retractable, but we'll find out if manually is, okay. And then, the main difference we have here is in the shade sail, we say, John, do you have language on that, that you're,
shade sail, said shade sail shall not be, hang on a second.
Not exceed 10 feet
Yeah, total
or
area
the
of the-
highest
maximum height
eave.
shall be the greater of the eave, the highest eave, or 10 feet above the floor of the area shaded.
okay. All right. All right, and then we get rid of that, gets rid of the multi-story. Okay, or single story, okay. Okay. And then trellises, is everybody okay with the no taller than the structure it's attached to, or adjacent to?
Right,
Yeah.
Yeah,
as long as street means, because somebody could put it between two windows facing a street, and, with front yard or whatever. The street is front or side, right?
In this instance, yes.
Okay.
Yes. All right,
Hey, can I go back?
yes.
Because I was holding one question until the end, but we've kind of just working this with you as you go through. Back on definitions,
Okay,
under trellises, you say it's an individual flat panel framework of light wooden or metal bars. I know you can get them in PVC, I know you can get them in other materials. I don't know that you need to limit or to state what materials they can be made out of, because you don't do that for any of the others.
Okay. An individual flat
You could
panel
say,
framework
made out
Could
of,
be metal or whatever. yeah.
intended, okay.
I mean, I don't know that you have to list the material, it's just
Okay.
a framework,
It's a framework.
a framework
An individual,
of material.
Could be a bunch of wires strung between a.
Right.
Yeah.
okay.
It's, because otherwise somebody gets a PVC, they're technically not
Right.
conforming.
No, that's what we'd like to avoid. I think that's what we thought was consistent and it would weather, but you're right, so would PVC. So, okay, good, that's the type of thing we want to see, so, all right. All right. Then if we're okay with the the attached, then we can go to the detached structures. All right.
So back on the attached, we have two changes, right? We're gonna take out manually retractable, just say retractable,
And just, okay.
for pergolas, and then we're gonna.
But we
put
see,
it-
we don't want them permanently covered. That's what, so manually retractable.
But it just
panel.
says manually, as Scott pointed out, it could be I think it was Scott.
Motorized.
And a motorized retractable
Okay.
fabric. It
All
can
right.
still say retractable, but if somebody,
Break the manual.
Okay.
the
we'll get
older
rid
I
of
get, the
manual.
more I appreciate motors and
Okay,
not manual.
okay.
But, and so we're still gonna set a 10 feet limit for the pergolas that are attached to the house.
Above the surface covered, maybe we should change that,
Yeah,
right?
it shouldn't say paved surface.
Yeah, I don't.
I still think 10
What
feet
was it
is
changing, which part? The,
really restrictive.
You still think,
What-
even
what do
if
you want
it's
it to be?
above like a
12
deck
feet?
height or
I don't
something.
know, I just don't know if we set I just don't understand why we have to set a height limit. What's the difference? It's whatever is aesthetically and construction-wise smart for the home.
And to
And I
scale.
No,
think
we
about
have to have
all the
some
homes
standards
I've-
or
I
people
mean,
would have.
Every house you draw, I've drawn hundreds of plans and everything's different. And, again, I could go to John's house and figure out a place to put a pergola off of it, and I guarantee it's gonna need to be 10 foot, more than 10 feet high.
Right, because you have to worry about scale of
You
a
gotta,
home
well,
too.
and it's gotta be above the windows, or it's gotta be above something, and yes, you do have to work with scale. And I just don't want somebody to go, oh, no, I've gotta come in and get a variance because,
Well, what is it that is the worst that could happen if we took the height out?
right, that's what I wanna know.
well, I don't know if it would, like you said, if it goes out of proportion, it starts to cover,
Well, we can't dictate a lot of other design
Aesthetic
features
things,
either.
yeah.
well, and you said 10 or, well, does it start to dominate the house again? We get back to that.
Well,
Yeah.
again, we can't say to somebody, you can't put a 24-foot high garage on your house. I mean, it's up to them what the aesthetics are. And as long as it, construction-wise, engineering-wise, stands up and the building department approves it, who cares how tall it is?
Right,
Well, yeah,
Not our-
all these structures have a total of 25 feet is the high, but it says it's supposed to be less than the principal structures. So if that's what you want to go with, I think we were trying to think
Well,
of it.
I'd be good with that. Certainly a height less than the principal structure would be a,
Yeah, and
very
I'm sorry, that's more on the detached. For this one, it's attached to the home, so obviously it's not going to be higher than, so. But do we,
oh, it's up to you guys. I think it's, 10 feet
I mean,
isn't as much as
you think 10 feet is too low, though?
I agree.
It
I
is.
thought it was restrictive when I first read it, yeah.
Yeah, and like the one that you showed us, the picture of the house on the corner,
Yeah, I just want.
so, traditionally, they've got framing members going this way, and then the cross members go this way. So you've got
10
two,
to 12 inches.
the depth of two different, they could be 2x6s, but they could be 2x10s going this way and 2x10s going that way.
Well,
Now
then
you
you
got-
have a third layer on top too.
Right, not that one, but the other one.
Right,
That one you
right,
do.
right.
The one that's here in Geneva that you showed on, that one. I mean, see, so
there's
if you
a
go to
lot
the top of that,
there.
that's like 20 inches taken up right there.
Yeah,
Yeah, that is.
But that railing, what did you say that railing is, it's less than 4 feet, that's, right? It's
It's
maybe
probably
higher than 3 feet.
42 inches.
Like a 3.
40, yeah, let's say 42 inches, and you double that, so it's another, so you're again, 8
probably over
feet.
10
You
feet
know,
there.
I think that, I would be surprised if it was much over
But it
10.
looks great on that house, because that's a low house.
Okay,
You know?
all right.
The top of the window is 6'8", then it looks like it's a foot above that, that's 7'8". Then you got a 2x10,
Well, would you rather say
8'8".
first story of
You're
the
already
home,
up to
or-
10 foot.
Yeah,
I think Terry's point, Paul, is that if, on that architecture looks great, on a Victorian home that stands 3 stories tall,
gonna
that
look
would be that would look
Squatty.
dinky.
yeah.
We're not talking by 10 feet, we're talking by 2 or 3 feet, and I think if you limit it to 10, I think that,
Would you want to say 12 then, or do you want to keep
You
this
say the
open?
first story, would that work? Or is it possible somebody,
Or what about to the underside of the lowest structural member? Make,
Would you have,
and between that and the floor of the area, as defining the height?
I'm trying to think.
Personally, I'm good with like 12 feet. I agree.
I think 12.
And then
All
if
right.
it's non-conforming
Yeah.
and somebody complains, they can come up here
Right.
and we can be
And
like,
some of
yeah, it's
this-
12 foot too, no problem.
Right, this is new, and some of this we'll find out,
Yeah, I
that,
think
oh, I'm coming with my plans, and the
12
only size
12
they
foot
have is
above-
11 foot.
above the base of the pergola.
paved surface.
Hey, and it might not be, it might be a deck, it might be, but of the,
Of the surface.
Of the surface.
covered surface?
Of the covered surface, yeah.
What was your language, John?
Of the covered surface.
Of the
12 feet
12 feet
above, above grade or above the covered surface.
Of the covered surface.
And so is that 12 feet to the top of the structure
Yeah,
then, or
Yeah.
the underside?
It would be the very top.
that's the top.
That's the height.
That's the way we measure, very top of
So
the,
that should be in there too, somewhere. The top of the,
well, it's the way we'd okay,
well,
12
I-
feet.
It probably, it's probably
wouldn't know.
implied.
I
12
would-
feet would be the height of the structure.
I think that'll do it.
Okay,
If they come in something larger than that, might need to look at it.
Okay.
But
That's
many
what I'm
cases,
saying,
you're probably
yeah.
fine.
okay.
But that'll,
Well, I
that
think those
should
are some-
cover it.
Some good ideas, like I said, is testing some of this, I think we were looking more commercially, or we did have some of the historic district in mind too of this, but I guess that
I'll let-
they would be reviewing some of this if it
Yeah,
got
I'll
out,
let
you know.
the HPC deal with it.
So,
And so I think we're going to 12 feet on the pergola, other definition as well to be consistent, right?
Yes,
okay.
Allowed up to 12 feet above the covered surface.
yes.
All right. Should I go on to detached now, or?
Okay.
I think so.
What did we decide on lighting? Sorry,
Allowed.
Lighting's fine.
I took out no.
no permanent lighting?
Yeah,
So
no
just okay,
permanent,
just only seasonal lighting? Are you taking out that whole section? What are you
Lighting
taking
shall,
out?
oh, okay. Yeah, I guess so. Only seasonal and what?
Or do you just want to not mention lighting? Do you need to mention electric at all? Do we need to restrict electric in pergolas and gazebos? I
Well,
mean,
again, we get into, a little bit when we take a little lighting away, is we get into people using it like all year long as a, I don't know.
Do you
It can be
care?
used, I don't know.
should be allowed to use it all year long.
Do we care if they use it all year?
I like it when
Well,
people use their
But
pergolas.
if it's Christmas lights or blue lights, and I mean, I don't know, some of it, I agree there's some lighting that could be tasteful.
all their
over house
bushes and
anyway,
all
that's
over.
right.
Yeah, but then we're, okay, there's just,
Do we need to regulate electricity in any of these structures?
well, I think some of it, then we get into the permitting of the, running the electricity and the permitting.
Isn't that for the
Let
building
contractors
department?
worry about that.
It's not our problem, yeah.
If it's allowed and if it's run into an underground conduit at the appropriate depth and by an electrician, and
Well, this
does
is-
it matter to us?
This is attached, so we're not talking about having to run anything
Right.
underground.
Yeah, all right.
I'm just, yeah, do we
Yeah, I
need
don't
to,
care
do
if
we
it's
need to
like-
address any electricity in this? It's
I
gonna
don't
be the
think so.
building department.
It's part of the house.
So we're taking out the lighting then?
Yep.
All right.
So
All right,
just
do you wanna
all
read-
reference.
do you wanna read-
You take out starting no permanent lighting all the way through, and then.
Up to duplex, right?
No, no, you're taking.
You're taking out the duplexes?
Then you go,
Are allowed.
it says, property, may extend to the property line of the street setback, comma, retractable fabric panels may be installed.
Yep.
So you just reference, you're
Okay.
taking out,
Break all that between those two.
All right. Okay.
And that would carry over to the other uses as well, the pergolas and the gazebos and summer houses.
You're on the next section, or
Yeah, I'm on
you don't have
detached.
summer houses and,
No, I'm just saying, I said, would that carry over
Oh.
to the other places you reference electricity? Are we talking about
yeah. Okay,
even arbors?
all right. All right, should we go to the next one, or?
I think so, yep.
All right, so for detached, we're looking at the arbors. Should put up an arbor. All right, allowed up to 8 feet above grade or paved walkway, allowed up to 3 feet in depth and no greater than 2 feet wider than the walkway it covers, but in no instance over 8 feet. No permanent lighting shall be permitted, only seasonal, low wattage lighting, restricted to a single duplex outlet, no setback required. So we're thinking of this as a freestanding. We're thinking of this as a freestanding structure. It's generally, as we talked about, we think of it as an entrance feature, to a yard or to a fence. Covered tunnel structure with trellis, side panel support, climbing plants may be freestanding or incorporated in a fence. So 8 feet high, that's what we typically see, people walking through a walkway, paved walkway. Allowed up to 3 feet in depth. That keeps this from being sort of one of the things to talk about a pergola. Is this a pergola? No,
Right.
this is an arbor. That's one of the ways we're distinguishing what these are. Okay, and then no greater than 2 feet wider than the walkway it covers. And again, it's somebody trying to say that's an arbor and they were making it, it's intended as a walkway, an entrance feature, not like a pergola. If you want a pergola, then we'll do that. If that's okay, then I'll move on to.
What about electricity? Are we taking it out of there? I don't care if
Well,
somebody's got.
it's,
accent.
okay, it's standalone, so again, I guess you're thinking if somebody would light it in the middle of their garden, I guess. That would be the thought?
I haven't totally thought through this on the lighting yet. I'm thinking, you can put this in a front yard.
Could put it at a
So-
front
so-
sidewalk, yeah.
Yeah, so if somebody has this in their front yard, the sidewalk, on a relatively dense street, and they have permanent lights on it, and you're coming down that street, and there's houses, and then all of a sudden, there's this lit-up thing
Right.
at the sidewalk, maybe that's not so great.
Right. I mean, I know it's pluses and minuses on that, and you just don't know what somebody's going to do, and if it's, is it too much, I don't know, I guess we have
I would think someone certainly might want to use a landscape-type lighting
Right,
on it.
right.
On the sides of it.
Low
So,
voltage.
Yeah.
right, at least want to leave that
Right,
as
so-
an
I
option.
So
think
maybe
that's
no,
okay.
maybe no high voltage lighting, only
Yeah,
seasonal.
well, that's what we had is low wattage, only seasonal lighting.
I'm not sure what seasonal means, is
Yeah,
that, what does seasonal mean?
I'm gonna light it in
Well,
December
I would
as well as
definitely
June.
say for the holiday, the November,
So you're thinking
January.
Seasonal is holiday lighting, and I was thinking seasonal meant summer. So-
I was too. I'm
Me
with you,
too,
man.
me too.
I was thinking seasonal was summer,
Yeah.
and like
Right.
winter was.
seasonal lighting, I'm
We
sorry,
still
that
have
too.
lights on our trees in the
Yeah.
winter. I mean,
I don't think
Shining up.
seasonal is gonna help.
I don't
Okay.
think you'd want to limit it to being seasonal.
Just strike seasonal
I
and
think
Okay.
it should be
Low
low
wattage.
low
Okay.
wattage,
All
but
right.
not
no
seasonal.
permanent light should be permitted,
Yeah.
only low wattage.
Can
lighting.
I ask maybe this is way out there, but what does low wattage mean? Isn't LED low watt but high lumens?
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah,
The
that's,
definition of low wattage is
we're gonna
probably
need,
changing.
right.
Right,
I
that's
think
what
the
I'm saying,
intent was,
like-
yeah, that we didn't have to have,
Is that kind of an old school?
again, with permanent lighting and the lighting side
How
of
about
this.
accent lighting, only accent
Yeah.
lighting?
Your low wattage
Landscape
is
lighting?
landscape lighting.
Landscape lighting.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
not,
Yeah,
What you
I'm
don't
thinking
want
that
is a
this was dealing with
spotlight.
code issues, is now, now you're separated, you have to draw something, run wiring out to it, and when we say permanent, So this is, it definitely is different from the attached. So now we're detached, running, electricity, and I think we were trying to avoid that. An extension cord, okay, some lighting in that gives it to the seasonal side, but as far as permanent being out there all year long and running electricity to it, I think that's what we were beginning to say. We think that was a little too much.
But you're allowing a single duplex outlet, which means you've got to, you're running electricity out there
Yeah.
anyway, so you
Maybe that-
can't have it
High
both
voltage
ways.
at that point.
Yeah.
I would
Take
get rid
that
of that.
out.
Plug your weed whacker.
Yeah.
No permanent lighting shall be permitted, only low voltage lighting.
Is that, say low voltage, is that what you're saying?
Or
Low
landscape.
voltage,
Not, take out wattage?
Low voltage?
But how
or
are they?
low wattage, yeah, low
Oh,
wattage,
okay.
I'm sorry. But take out seasonal and then take out the last sentence.
Okay,
No, or no setback required is fine,
okay.
but
Take out the duplex.
yeah.
All right. A single
Would
duplex,
it be
okay.
better to say landscape lighting? Would people get a clearer picture of what you're talking about?
But this is the lighting that's attached to the arbor, not, I think of landscape lighting as like
In the ground?
in the ground, shining up,
Shining.
We don't regulate that probably.
up lighting.
No,
Don't ask.
it's coming.
So what we're saying is, if they want lights out there, they've got to run an extension cord, because we're taking out the opportunity for an outlet.
I guess that is what we're saying.
Which is kind of
Yeah,
hokey
I think,
looking.
it
that's
could
a
be
good point, too.
hardwired,
I think, 8 feet wide.
So you're right, it would be by taking out the
Yeah, I don't get,
duplex, now we're getting out of the hard wiring and we're back to what I was thinking was, yeah.
Only low voltage lighting.
I mean, we allow people to have a light on a pole in their front yard, right? So and the wires go to that, and it's on a switch, so what's the difference if they, I mean,
Why
that's,
don't we just avoid lighting
I think so
altogether?
too.
Yeah,
They have to
Then
get a,
so you're saying they let them do any lighting, and then what if it's
Well,
really bright and it's
yeah,
shining
but-
in everybody's front yard?
well, they
at a
could,
certain point, can't the city, like the building, like we talked about before, can't they?
Like a light meter and say this is too much light coming
Yeah, I
off?
mean,
Is that-
or if it's affecting traffic, like your example, wouldn't that, there's gotta be some regulation that you can't
Remember the
interfere
Lutheran
with
church?
traffic.
That's
Lutheran
exactly what I'm
church
thinking
sign,
about. We
when
made
they
a
first
mistake
put it
with
in,
the
it was really
Lutherans.
bright.
Yep,
Which one?
the
The-
Lutheran church sign, we made a
On
mistake with
Caneville?
that. We let them put it in, and it was so bright, and
You
That
could
was
see it
before my
from
time. I
over
remember
half a
that.
mile away down Caneville.
we didn't realize it was gonna be so disruptive. It was.
So what would solve that problem?
No, we didn't solve that problem.
No, what
They
would have,
voluntarily
in
made it
retrospect?
not quite as obnoxious as it was.
So are we thinking about taking no
I w-
permanent lighting off then? Is that what you're saying or no?
I don't know.
I don't
I
think
would,
we figured this out.
I would put limited to low wattage lighting.
Okay.
No
I'm okay
permanent
with
lighting
that.
shall be, no.
Because you could put a permanent low voltage light.
Yeah, like
Yeah,
a
I'm all right with
landscape.
that.
And it's,
I
and
don't
it's
care if
fine.
it's permanent or
Shining
not.
down on
Restricted,
the lot.
maybe restricted to low wattage lighting,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Limited
Okay.
to low wattage,
no setback
not,
required.
we're not gonna say slash landscaping, just.
Correct.
Correct.
Low
Okay.
wattage,
People get confused on that.
yeah.
Okay. All right, do we want to go on to gazebo?
Okay.
All right. 14 feet. I guess we found that to be a pretty common height of, generous height out there. Tallest feature, finished grade. Permanent lighting, overhead fans and duplex shall be permitted. And then we just say if it's ADA compliant, if you're going to have this as a public thing, you got to have public access to it. And it's allowed only in the rear yard as a detached structure.
Okay.
All right. Now pergolas, let's see. All right. Imagine we're gonna wanna change this to what we
Yep.
had. I'm
Allowed
just
up
trying
to
to think of
12
any
feet above the
differences.
covered surface,
So this is gonna be,
period.
this is gonna be more standalone. I don't think I have a good picture of a standalone pergola. But, let me think if I do. Let me see if I have one of those. Yeah, there's a standalone pergola. I mean, example of one. This is one that I found, obviously in Ariel, in Fifth and South.
What they do.
There's a long, but this would be an example of a standalone pergola. So,
I
so
don't know that. I wouldn't have thought it was a pergola.
what's that?
Oh, that's the
It's a
yellow,
shadow.
is that the
I know
yellow
what that
house?
is. I
Or
know
no,
what
that's
that
the house
is,
with the
yeah.
big,
I thought it was more like
It's a
an
stone
arbor.
house. It's a
or
groves.
Tunnely sort of.
I really thought that was an arbor.
I did too.
It's like the arbor over at the Japanese Gardens, that's an arbor.
Exactly. It's like that.
So you would call it an arbor. See, that's one of the things we're getting into, an arbor
by our
and a
definition,
pergola.
because it's longer
But we
than
would,
4 feet.
I
I
think,
know, I didn't want to bring that up, but.
I think this would meet the definition of, given the size, it would be a pergola.
Let's just go back to not regulating this stuff. Leave it all alone.
Wait till somebody complains.
Define it, but, yeah.
So what would people say if, for pergolas, do we want to say if it's standalone, is 10 feet a good
No, I think we
height
said
for
12.
standalone?
I think it should be 12 feet.
12 feet's the same. It's
Oh,
just-
12 feet?
Yeah,
Okay.
I think it's just,
Well, now it's not up against a structure.
That's okay.
So, okay. Okay, allowed up to 12 feet above grade, or paved
above
surface.
cover, above the covered surface.
Of the
is what
covered
we're-
surface.
Period. And I think we're taking lighting out unless,
You know where isn't there a big tall one at the, I can't think of the name of that house, the stone house on, when you're going on 31, where they wanted to do the HPC, the big stone house that sits right when you come off of Third onto 31,
And Cheever?
in Cheever, the big stone house, don't they
Yeah, I
have a
know
big,
what you're talking
a
about.
really high
They do
pergola
have a
there?
higher one, yeah, now that you mention it.
Or an arbor or
But
something
even
that's free, I think
because
they
of
have
the
a
size of the house,
freestanding
it
one.
doesn't, like,
Well,
nobody
I know,
cares.
but there, there's your example, like, if we put a little
So-
goofy one out there.
So what do we want to say with lighting? Take the lighting away? Just, is this a low watt lighting again if it's
We
detached?
should be consistent on the lighting, I think.
Yeah.
well, the reason you had low wattage on arbors is that could be right at the front sidewalk.
Yeah.
Why
This
are
is-
we allowing it for gazebos and not,
Because it's in the rear
It's
yard.
only in the rear yard.
So you could put a freestanding pergola in your front yard? I
Yeah.
don't know if that's makes sense.
Oh, a
if you-
freestanding,
I'm
yeah.
not sure that makes sense
Should a
if
per-
it's freestanding.
If it's freestanding, it
Well,
shouldn't
it
be in the
only has to
street yard.
be,
No.
you know,
Well,
that
it-
one that we saw could still be detached if it's not physically attached to the home.
Say that again.
You mean that
Yes.
one on James Street?
If, the one that I showed you the picture of, whoops, what the
One
heck?
on James.
Oh,
That's
wow.
attached, though.
All right, let's try
It's
this
a tent. Are
again.
we regulating tents?
No tents in the
Lighting.
front yard and no permanent lighting.
This is getting tense.
Is there permanent lighting in that tent?
It's very,
Now we go back again. Okay, got it here. What is it? Oh, from the beginning, okay. Try that, sorry. Sorry about that.
disappeared?
There we
This
go.
one, if it wasn't attached, now it's attached to the,
If it wasn't attached, they couldn't have it, in my opinion.
well, but, okay, but then that's what this section is dealing with, is detached. Detached pergolas.
But detached should not be in the front yard.
Yeah, I agree.
I don't think
We
detached
should
should be
take
in
it
the
out of
front
the ST yard, right?
Yeah.
Could be in a.
Now,
Or no,
okay,
it's
ST
the
means,
same.
could be
and now this
side
is,
yard.
now here's an
but
example,
It's allowed in the side yard, just not allowed where there's a street.
but,
But what if it's a side yard on a corner?
You can't have it.
and we're also
It has to
looking at
be
this as
between
commercially
the
too.
houses.
Now, we have, we'll throw out an example, like Fiora's, for example. One of them's a street and one of them's a front, okay? So they can't have it in the front, well,
You can put-
but
you have a big-
would you allow this standalone to be in a street yard?
the next-
You know, so,
I think they need something like that out there personally.
But attached, I think that looks tasteful.
Yeah.
No, but he's talking about Fiora's.
I mean, I'm just
Put it out
saying
in patio.
commercially, while you're saying, you're thinking of the front yard,
It's a good example. They should have that.
Absolutely.
so
That'd
that,
be nice.
well, I'm just thinking of commercially,
They
if
would
you
come
look
for
at
a
things like.
variance and that would, we may grant that, right?
He told me he tried to put a gazebo in there for the bands that the city wouldn't let him, but I don't really believe that he really tried to do that, so.
But, you know, yeah. So I don't know,
I could also see someone with a front yard, and I feel like there's a house and it would be historic probably, but where there's a long pergola, arguably maybe an arbor that, where the, you know, that goes to the front door, you know, that you walk under. You know what I mean? I could
Yeah.
picture that. Isn't there one
Could it-
over by,
Legal non-conforming.
I'm thinking,
Can't visualize it.
Couldn't we say allowed in any yard except the front yard?
We could?
Just like
For,
the shade sale.
this is
Yeah.
for,
I don't think, and then leave it ST, right?
Right.
yes.
Yeah.
Then, okay, right, we could do that.
That's what I would,
So take it out of the front yard.
correct.
Yeah.
All setbacks would still apply if it was detached, right, Paul? It's
The-
not extending into the
For the
set.
detached, it's 5 feet from a side and a rear
Property line.
property line, yeah, so, let's see, for a detached, most of the stuff is in the side and the rear, side 5 yards, so 5 feet, yeah, we probably have about 5 feet for all property lines, I guess.
So we're saying pergola's not in the front. So Fioras would have to come in for some kind of variance.
Any yard except the front yard is what,
Well, they would come on
I
from
would,
HBC.
I would do it in front or any
Everything.
street yard, but I'm willing to, whatever the collective wisdom is.
so are you okay with, are we taking lighting out then?
I think
No
we did.
permanent lighting?
We did already.
You did,
Lighting should be consistent, I think, among
Correct.
all these uses, I don't see the difference.
Low wattage.
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
well,
No, the pergola
gazebos, as
we
we
had-
pointed
we
out,
just took it out.
gazebos in a rear yard only, it makes a little more
Correct.
sense.
Gazebo is a permanent fixture, right? Or,
Are we just talking about pergolas right now? or-
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, we took it out of pergola over here.
Okay.
So let's take it out of pergola over here, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So are we saying, are we going with only low watt,
No,
the same language?
we're taking it
Yeah.
out
Oh, completely, I'm sorry, okay,
in a pergola,
but we left it in arbor, okay.
Left it in an arbor.
okay,
because arbor was up,
Down at the
potentially up at
sidewalk.
somebody's front sidewalk and.
Right.
okay.
Anything that's not in a front yard, I don't think we need
So-
to regulate the.
For this category, for detached accessory structures, and we're dealing with pergolas, any yard except the front yard, allowed in any yard except the front yard up to a height of 12 feet above
You
any
guys are
covered
all
surface.
okay with it in both, in a street yard?
I am,
Corner
but
house.
I'm okay with
Does
it.
that sound good then? 12 feet in height above the covered surface, and any yard except the front yard.
Well, not next week.
Not the front.
The
Okay.
side yard.
Allowed.
So, getting back to the Fiora's example, would that
Okay.
mean with the front yard thing, we're ruling out that Fiora's could have a detached pergola above their patio?
They'd come for a variance.
To come to us,
They come for
Yeah.
a variance, okay,
if they can get through the HPC.
right.
All right. Back to, let's try to see if I can get this right again. Which one? All right. So we just did pergolas. Now we're at shade sales.
Well, I have a question on this playground
sorry.
equipment. Why does it
Yeah, I
say
think I have that
rear
one
yard?
next on this, let me see. Yeah,
This confused me because it says allowed
in all
in all
yards.
yards, and then it says rear.
So like a swing set has to be in the
Playground
rear, but
equipment.
your basketball equipment can be in your driveway.
And playhouses
makes
can
sense.
be in the front yard too?
There we go.
That's detached, well, we
this
put
is
them, yeah.
detached, and these are just,
Yeah, basketball hoops are,
are allowed in all yards.
So playhouses, basketball hoops, backstops, and supporting posts are allowed in all yards.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's in the parentheses. Sometimes the playground equipment,
So it's just like.
It's in the
slope.
rear yard.
playground equipment in the rear, but these other things you can put
correct.
in your
This is
driveway.
parenthetically.
Right, but what constitutes a playhouse?
Yeah.
It looks like a gazebo.
Can it have lighting? Permanent lighting?
Yeah, somebody's saying, no, it's a playhouse.
Has a garage door,
It's a gazebo. No, it's
You
a
know what?
playhouse.
I think you can see where we added that in, but you're right. Are allowed in all yards,
Got
yeah.
around that one.
Playhouses.
and then it'll be
Yeah.
in front of us because the
Yeah.
administrator said that
Yeah.
it's not this. And then we'll have to figure out what it is.
So maybe we'll strike playhouses out if that's what, yeah, when I see that with the others, that parenthetically, that these are exceptions are allowed, but playhouses you're right, in any yard would not.
I'm sorry, on a corner lot, can you say the definition of a rear and a side again? Or rear, well, all
When
the
you
yard?
have a corner lot, the front yard is the smaller of the two,
Of the two street yards.
of the two street yards. So if one's,
By
if
square
one's 80 and
footage
one's
or
100,
by-
the 80-foot
Oh, good question.
a width lot, that is your front yard. And the thought behind that is the longer one will help then make your rear yard. So the longer dimension of a corner will then, because then now you have a longer lot. The front yard is the narrow part, and it goes back. So the thought is it gives you more rear yard by having the narrow dimension as the front yard.
So this is,
So the side opposite the front yard on a corner house is the side yard. The side opposite the side yard, or the street yard, is the rear yard.
I'm confused.
Well, we go with the opposite of a front yard is the rear yard.
But, okay, so I live
But that's
I
the
live on a
shorter of the
corner.
two, you said.
Right, I live on a corner too, that's why I'm
Okay,
just
so
like
where do
curious.
I, does my side yard that's on the street start at the curb? I mean, start at the same curb that my front yard starts at?
It's just the dimensions of your lot. If you look at your plat, these are your property lines, and say you have an 80-foot and a 100-foot dimension. Whatever the 80-foot dimension is, that's your front yard, okay? It's on a corner. And then immediately opposite that is the rear yard.
So the 80-foot
But-
is right to the corner, though. So,
Yeah,
No,
to
it's
the
just,
corner.
it's to your property pin. It's your
right,
property pin.
right.
So they're not overlapping. But I thought you said earlier that you did that definition so that you would have the biggest rear yard possible.
Right,
That would be-
deepest, I think, deepest.
How
I
do you-
don't see
how
how
do
it
you-
impacts.
None of that definition deals with setback.
You kind of draw it equal.
Well,
I thought you.
I'm saying, okay, so if you have if you have a 100-foot yard,
Like that.
and you have again, you have a 100-foot street and a 80-foot street.
Yeah.
If the definition of a rear yard is opposite of the front yard, then instead of being 100 feet deep, you only have 80 feet deep, right? Because it's got to go one way or the other way.
Well, the house, you don't know how far the house goes. So you don't know how.
Right, but the lot is going to be deeper that way. It's going to be, you're going to have more room to have a rear yard. And the thought is, because you're putting these obstructions or accessory structures in your backyard, that's why you want to have generally a larger backyard. A rear yard. It doesn't mean it always
So when I
falls like
measure
that,
the
but that's
side
the
yard, is it
definition that
front
we've always worked
Your
on.
side yard is
Here's your curve.
your,
right?
part of your, really part
Property
of your
stake.
rear
Setback.
yard.
Okay, all right, but
Well,
what happens
it
to
depends, a
this
lot of them.
piece?
The
Does
street
this
yard, the
get
front yard
counted?
runs between
This is 100 feet, and yours is
between the
longer.
two,
Yeah.
in front of the house, between the two
Front yard, because it's
side
shorter.
lots, I
But
want to
does it
say.
go to this
The
point?
street
Goes
yard
to
and the
here.
side lot.
Okay, but does it go back
Okay,
to
that's
the
the
house?
dimension of
Just
front.
measured this way.
And the
I
rear
don't-
runs
no,
from
I-
the
no.
side
No.
to the street on the back
Yes,
side.
that's what I'm asking.
And the side runs from the front of your house to the
This
back
is
of your
street
house, the
yard.
physical
This is not
dimension of
rear
But
your
I
house.
just don't
Okay.
understand.
I mean, there's an
this
illustration. We
here,
can look
how
at that. I didn't want to get too off track on
No, I
that.
gotcha.
But
I
just,
gotcha.
the only thing I wanted to let you know when we say
Allowed
front
here,
yard, what
or
we
can I
meant
put it
was,
here?
when you're thinking about it, it's the smaller dimension, and
Gotcha.
sorry about that.
Stop
I
here.
I don't
going
know.
through
I'm more, this is honestly, I'm taking our time because
No,
I have a
I'm-
corner
you know,
lot,
it's-
so I'm
Better
kind
than
of curious.
anything.
It's good that you know what we're figuring, because some people will ask you that, why did they say you wouldn't be allowed? Because that was in the front yard.
And it doesn't matter which way the house faces.
Correct, and it doesn't matter for address.
Or where
you know.
your front door is, yeah.
Correct, all that is
Street yard.
urban legend,
Very
et cetera,
good.
that we have to establish, and one of the reasons we do it this way is to try to give the most area for the depth for rear yard, for things that you want to have in the rear yard, patios, porches, things like that. And that's the thought, is generally, that's the reason that most, I think, communities do it like that.
I don't understand where on a corner lot, where the street side, the street yard and the front yard are divided. Are they divided? There's a a chunk there that could go either way.
Right.
Where is it allocated to the,
And
to the street yard or the front yard?
That's a good question. We have an illustration that I can go through after this, but there's an illustration in our zoning ordinance that we can do, and that's what I look at constantly. And usually it's front yard and rear yard dominate, okay? They both go across the back of the home and they go across the front of the home, okay? And then the side yard is just from the back of the house, physically back of the house.
Just,
The profile of the
just
house.
next
of
to
the-
the house.
Yeah, but the street yard gets a little tougher because generally,
Then your
generally you
backyard-
gotta run along the side of the house and then the
Yeah,
rear.
because then part of the backyard is a street yard.
Yes, no, that's correct. It's difficult to sometimes to,
Give her any ideas.
But not according to the
yeah. If we look at that illustration, but something has to dominate there, and we do have some conflict sometimes between saying, wait a minute, is that rear yard? Because the building aren't exactly symmetrical sometimes, and you have a portion of its rear, and now it's in the side yard. So
Cited on an
there actually is some overlap on
to
those.
further complicate.
Yeah, and so you try to say what dominates. Usually a front yard and a rear yard dominate over side yards.
Is it possible my side yard is my front yard by
That's what I'm
definition?
thinking. My side yard might
Because I
really
think
be
my,
my front yard. There's
my
nothing
side
wrong
yard
with
is
it.
smaller
You're-
than my front yard.
Your side yard is only from the front of your house, physically front of your house, to the physical back of your house.
Oh,
That's your
okay.
side yard. It doesn't go into the, further than the plane, the back plane of the houses, and the front plane of the houses. That's the side yard. That is the side yard.
Then that's smaller than my front yard, and you said the front yard should be the smallest.
Of the front and back,
Of the two street
not
yards.
including the side.
Of the two street yards,
Yeah,
but it's bigger
yeah.
in my house if you, that way, if you
So
say it
maybe
that
it's, if this is your house, like, you take this whole chunk or this whole chunk.
way. That's
which
what I'm wondering.
It's, and then once you determine which of those is smallest, then
The other one, yeah.
this
Then the other one
becomes
gets
your
To the
side.
house lines,
What-
yeah.
When we get through this, I can go through, we have an illustration
Oh, no,
that we
that's
have in our
okay.
zoning ordinance
That's all right.
that actually shows and will answer all those questions,
Okay.
so.
I'm not building anything.
All
that
right,
doesn't matter.
all right. So we're gonna strike playhouses in this,
In the parens.
yes, in the parens. And then these are the exceptions that you commonly see in the driveways and side yards, et cetera, street. Okay. Okay, so next is shade sale?
Same changes we had on the other one. Right?
Well, it's not allowed in the front.
Well, no, I'm talking about the height.
The
We
height.
did the height, shouldn't we limit that to the same, you know? it
Yeah.
could be-
Yes.
All right, so.
And now it's really, if it's detached, there's no relevance of the height of the building, I
Right.
don't think.
But they should be able to go above the eave, but they shouldn't.
So then shouldn't it just be, what did we say the height could be, 10 feet?
We said that the shall be the greater of the highest eave or 10 feet above the floor.
Maybe it should just be 10 feet if it's detached.
See,
Right,
yeah,
the
what we're
highest
referencing here is the highest eave of the structure that it's adjacent to. So context-wise, you're on the side of the house, you know, say it's off of a porch, a single-story porch in the back, you know, it's relative to that rather than the second floor of the house.
You had a picture of the Mexican restaurant we were talking about. Can you pull that back up?
Yes,
Sergio's.
that was for my real-world examples out there.
Ser-
That
Sergio's, it used to be.
There.
Correct.
So,
What it used to be.
And again,
Footnotes
one of the
or
things we
whatever.
looked at, why we said is the height is from the surface it's on. You know, so the
Never saw
level
that.
of the surface it's covering, so we're not, even though this is up
Got
on
it.
the second
Got
floor
it.
or a patio, we're not saying this is 20 feet in the air, we're saying this is 10 feet in
I
the air.
got it. But I still think that you're getting pretty darn close to 10 feet on those corners where it's
12.
fastened or more.
Well, and that's why we had, when it was attached to the eave,
How about for detached, we say 12?
I know, but now you just said detached, just
no
10 feet.
higher than the highest eave of the structure the sale is adjacent to.
Why don't we say maximum
there's no
height for
eave there,
detached
so-
is 12 feet above the covered area?
Yeah,
I agree.
just
Okay.
make it simple.
Yeah, that's fine.
12 feet?
Yes,
Yep.
Okay.
12 feet above.
I never heard of summer houses.
You're deprived.
Yeah, we didn't have it. I never heard of it. Not like,
I never have either. We put out a refrigerator box and said, go play in your summer house.
Is a summer house a greenhouse?
Hey, how do greenhouses fit in all of that?
Yeah.
Let's see.
Enclosed.
You would want lighting in there and fans and,
Yeah,
Oh, my gosh.
yeah,
No person shade, okay, public easement, that's fine.
set up a chair and enjoy it
Shall
in
not
there too.
exceed outdoor seating. Okay. The area of the shade cells shall not exceed the associated outdoor seating area, okay. Allowed in except the front yard, okay. So the only real change here is the height is 12 feet above the covered area, right?
Correct.
Okay. Next up is summer houses.
Allowed up to 14 feet to the tallest tree.
All right.
Did you find any examples of these in Geneva?
I did not. I'm not saying that they don't, but I just don't know. I didn't.
again, almost sounds like an whole accessory.
So we're saying,
It's a gazebo with windows. It's an enclosed gazebo, basically, right? So
Yeah.
shouldn't it?
Summer house.
Those gazebos.
yeah, it's not fully enclosed.
Movable or permanent enclosed panels and doors. Hey, what if you built one of these summer houses with permanent enclosure panels and doors? Is that different than like a little cottage in your backyard that somebody could live in?
Well, to be a livable structure, you need toilets and electricity, et cetera. To be a, what we want to say, a dwelling or a habitable structure, you need, this is just an accessory structure. So does that, what do we think?
Yeah, I see that, but do we say they can't have? We don't say they can't have all that stuff.
Isn't that in
Well, I
the
think that would
definition?
just,
Well,
that
it's
would
an
be other city code.
accessory-
If somebody's living in a place without plumbing or a kitchen,
Yeah.
then they would have, you can complain to the city and they could do something. If your kids sleep out
I could see
overnight in
sending
it on
one
a
of my
Friday
cousins
night, that's
to
fine, but
Send my kid out.
if you make your in-laws stay there for 2 weeks, it's probably not okay.
All right, tallest feature.
Go live in a
So,
summer
okay,
house.
so they can have permanent lighting overhead, so just like a
Judge
gazebo,
Barron's are coming. You're
ADA.
going to this.
Okay, is everybody okay with that one?
Yeah.
So
Okay.
It's just like a gazebo, only it's fully
Right.
enclosed.
All right, and then, that one. All right,
It's the same as
so
the applicable yard
for this one,
fence?
open air, maximum height allowed is the same as the applicable yard fence height, and we thought,
Yeah.
okay. That's 6 foot, whatever, 4 foot, okay.
Unless you have a robust
Okay.
clematis.
Does that seem like, now the question I have is, do I go back and take this and write these up again and come back to you guys with it, or?
I was gonna say maybe.
I'm just wondering if,
There's
you know,
other
before we advance
implications.
it, I want to make sure from some of this lighting and
Yeah.
some of the
Yeah.
reasons behind it, like I said, if it is some things like building code or things like that, that would make a big difference with this, or, you know, costs, and I realize you don't have to have it.
It'd probably be worthwhile for you to huddle and just bounce, rework on the language and ask a couple people, does any of this affect any of the other approval
Right.
processes?
That's, I would like to do just on the basis of the changes that we have, because we were comfortable putting it forward, but we're not, we understand there's, you know, changes, or people are gonna say, what about this instance, what about that? And maybe we were looking at it more from a commercial standpoint or something, and then forget from a residential standpoint that it's a little different tilt to it, so.
Sure. Question, do we, because we're not changing anything super material, but we are taking out electrical restrictions and changing some heights. Do we need to leave the public hearing open until he brings it back? Or can we close the public hearing and we just discuss the changes and then take a vote?
Because he's coming back with text.
That's, you're safer, right, come back, because then
We had defined text. and-
if there is something we want to change, we would rather leave it open too, then you're right, because if.
Exactly what it is, yes.
Somebody may have an issue with 14 feet or 12 feet versus 10 feet, and they didn't come
Yeah.
because it was 10 feet, so.
Possibly, or somebody in the interim could come in and get a permit and or whatever.
Right.
I mean, we could look at, again, so if there's some more research on height or whatever, but to find out, what some of the reasoning, some more of the reasoning on why.
Yeah, in terms of how the
Have a
building
limit.
code impacts some of this possibly. So,
Are people grandfathered in that have existing structures?
Yeah.
Legal
No questions, you can't
non-conforming.
complain.
Yeah.
Right.
Legal
Can't even complain.
non-conforming use.
Correct.
Yeah, if they've
Correct.
got a huge arbor out there.
Right,
That's the way it is.
yes,
Okay.
all right. Well, thank you for the input on that. Sometimes
you
we
need a
get our
motion to
group together,
continue
but
the
we
public
haven't,
hearing.
Yeah,
gotten out in the community more to say, okay, what are some of the reasons on this, so people would go with that, so.
So Paul, why don't you reschedule it to what?
Well, that's what, we want to not really have anything pending. Maybe we could do it, I was going to say we could update you at the next one, but they really want to leave this next one for commissioner training for the 23rd.
Okay.
So it would be, let's say, I believe it's February, I think it's, I was going to say February 9th, but
It's probably February.
I'll tell you. February 13th.
Okay.
Okay, so we'd bring it
So
back.
can I make a motion to continue this public hearing till Thursday, February 13th?
To continue it, right?
Yes,
Continue.
Yes. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to continue this public hearing until Thursday, February 13th.
Second?
Seconded. Paul?
All right.
Aye.
Commissioner Rittenhouse,
Aye.
Commissioner Evans,
Aye.
Commissioner Mead,
Aye.
Commissioner Slivka,
Aye.
Commissioner DeBates,
Aye.
Commissioner Kasserag,
Aye.
Chairman Stocking.
Yes. Aye.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right.
Do we have any other items?
No, just a couple of updates for you. So the 23rd, we're having a couple of people from Chaddick Institute in to do some training. They've been through this a lot. It's pretty comprehensive. It's kind of like the orientation that we had gone through before, but they'll go through a lot of different things, some of them quicker, but, we're going to focus more on the standards and the roles and things like that for the commission. So.
That's here?
It's going to be here, right,
Yeah.
right in this room. So, and that's why I said we don't really have anything other than this would have been pending.
It's not business. We don't want to do
Right.
business. We want to
So-
do training.
Correct. And so, if you hadn't heard then, the affordable housing did pass, but they didn't act on making it a requirement, but they did say they would review it in 6 months. Take another look at this in 6 months. Is it doing anything? We hope to maybe have something that is coming forward during that time, so we'll find out,
Is the onus on you to bring it back up in 6 months to us first and then them?
I don't know if it'll be called
Does it
like
come to us
at the
first?
council
Or
for a
does that-
report, but it's well within the
Does it
commission
even come
to
to
ask
us in
to.
6 months? Or
No, I
does it
just say
go
put it
straight
on the
to?
schedule, Paul. And
Yeah,
it's-
I would
in 6
too.
months, it's
6
going to be a
months.
work item
Let's talk about it every
for
6
this
months.
commission.
Okay.
At some point, the available
One way or another,
locations will
whether
be gone.
council's going to
Yeah.
do it first or us do it first.
I mean, it's passed,
Do it.
it's just, making it a requirement, so it's not like, it's
No, I
not.
get it,
Yeah, okay.
but we want to revisit it and
Okay, will do,
based on your 6 months of experience working with the new rules.
okay. And then, maybe by February, we'll have a couple of subdivisions to look at too, small subdivisions to look at. We think that's it. So anyway, that's what we.
You said that might be on the 13th?
On the 13th, yeah, we would, the 23rd, we are.
The C-Tron site, is that owned by the bank still? Bank of Montreal?
No, not that I know of. It's owned by the Caris Capital is who owned it, I think, still owns it.
Okay, well, I thought it was because they had negotiated a sale from Bank of Montreal's
I mean,
REO.
Caris had sold it to them?
No, I thought,
You're talking the Citron property.
I think so.
Well, the ones that came through with the preliminary approval is Caris Capital, and they currently are marketing it to somebody to come in and take the single family,
Well,
the
they took
smaller
it
20.
down, so that the previous applicant did end up owning it, and now they're not going
Correct.
to build.
They
Okay.
did, right, they
That's all-
closed on it.
That's what I was asking.
Yes, I'm sorry.
It was previously owned by a bank, right? Maybe
Yeah, when we said Marquette, is that what you mean? Because Marquette, when it was
Marquette
Marquette.
was the developer, but I think they were buying it from Bank of Montreal.
Okay,
point.
well, yes,
Because
Caris
the
Capital
business.
then closed on it,
Okay.
and then they have it now to then to market it or whatever they want to do with it.
Are
But
they gonna build on the front part, though, the State
they're
Street
not
parcel?
moving forward with that yet either, so it's kind of on hold. So I think they're looking for another partner.
What about what's going on with Oberweis?
Took the fence
They
down.
took their fence down like they're
Yeah,
moving up.
because, what did they say? We said, they're wanting to get moving on it. They talked about putting the foundation in.
Well, they were doing some
And
utility
I think
work
we
in the
said, put the
parkway
fence back up.
this week.
They put
so-
the fence back up?
I think,
Not as of yesterday.
well, there was an email
days
that we
ago.
had recently that said they need to put the fence back up if you're gonna finish your foundation or something, so, yeah. So my understanding is they have their permit and they wanna go forward, so I don't know weather dependent at all, so.
All right.
No race in?
There's discussion, I think even tomorrow, just working on meeting, but they're still waiting for a response from the state. Part of the plan was to do some on-street parking on 25, south of State Street. They wanted to be able to do some on-street parking there. And, so we're still waiting for a response from the state. Is that something they can do or not? Giving up some of the land and enough to put some parallel parking along there. And so they've put that into the state. It's been in there a while, so they're kind of waiting. That's one of the steps they're waiting to see. Can they do that? It would help with the plan, so.
John, is there something you want to talk about?
Yeah, I just have a question. When we were discussing the cannabis, I was under the impression that if we had recommended to the city council
Right.
to pass on everything, let's give it a year, let's see how things go, and the city council took our recommendation and decided to vote everything down, that the state would bypass Geneva with regards to any of the licenses.
If we changed it?
No. If we recommended to the city council,
Right.
don't do anything,
If we had opted out.
opt it out, opt out.
Oh, okay.
And the city council says, we agree, we're gonna opt out. The state basically says, okay, Geneva, we're bypassing you. We're going to other communities,
Right, if you opted out.
if we opted out.
I think that would be the case, yes?
Okay. I had a neighbor that came to me that knows I sit on this,
Okay.
who met with Mayor Burns this past Monday and Dave DeGroot,
Oh,
and was told the exact opposite, that if we did nothing,
right.
that we would be licensed for everything. The community would be licensed for everything.
I don't know if it's quite that simple, but we wouldn't have much regulation. One of the things that we talked about is if we didn't define this as a use, the dispensing side that most people are concerned about, the dispensing side of it, if we didn't define it, then it would go under a retail sales, no different than any tobacco shop.
Okay.
So they'd have to have a license, which is a big deal to get a license right now, which is still over a year and a half or so before unless you have a medical facility, which we don't, like St. Charles. But so it won't be till like next summer or something that they're going to have other licenses for places that don't have medical. So one of the things that was true is if you don't do anything, we're not doing anything, and somebody had a license like a medical, they could technically open up in a district that would allow retail sales. So that was doing nothing. If we didn't opt out, we're out, until whatever date. And so we wanted to at least define, one of the things we wanted to define so we could say this is not just retail sales. So that was one of the things.
So opting out means nobody could open up.
Correct.
It kind of runs afoul of what you've heard.
Yeah.
Well, but I think it was different. I mean, opting out and then doing nothing is, right. Doing nothing is allowing to say, well, you don't have any restrictions. You haven't said you can't do it. That's what.
Yeah, you're wide open.
Correct. But I think some of us in that discussion did recommend, or we discussed at least, hey, let's just give it some time.
Right.
Yeah, we spent a long time on it.
Correct. And then we would have recommended to the city council opt out.
Rather than not do anything, that would definitely be the preferred.
Right.
Define, add the definitions, but opt
Right.
out.
Yeah.
But I guess the fuzzy line for me was, unless I wasn't paying attention in the 5.5-hour meeting, I didn't know, I must have missed where Dave said, if we don't do anything, if we don't opt out or anything, then potentially someone could come in and license that.
Yeah, that was said in the, sort of in the first part, we have to define these. If we don't do anything else, we had to do that section.
That's why there was a sense we had to do something. and
Sure.
We actually sat through a 5-hour meeting because we actually had to go on record. Otherwise, we were, the only other possibility was council saying no, period, opt out. So we're not gonna do that. We're gonna give them something and then they can choose to opt out or do the second thing.
Got it.
Yeah.
I don't want to be redundant because I wasn't here last time, and I know there was some discussion at the end of the meeting, but, so am I correct in understanding that by the city council passing this, that now retail sales are permitted anywhere throughout the city, or does that come back to us to say, okay, now they've decided to allow it, do we get to decide where?
It's a special use, and they have, they're allowed as special use, and they have the setbacks, and I still think, I think it's still in the I-1 districts that we had, but we said one on the, one recreational and one dispensary. So there's only a limit of one recreational license that we,
I read that it could be in any.
Third Street, State Street, yes, that's what,
And then, but then we would have to debate as a commission, does it affect the character of the area? Does it
Yeah.
affect the-
but I don't think we're going to get that opportunity. I think
No.
the council took it away from us.
no, it is a special use. It will definitely come back.
All those have to come to us,
Yeah.
and then we'll debate that.
'Cause we do
But
the
you're right,
public-
I wasn't at the meeting where
public
they,
hearing for those,
where they
I mean.
changed that.
Correct, and there'll be a public hearing.
Yeah, it definitely, the whole thing was, always was gonna be, come through a public hearing process and then go to the city council, so that,
Any of those uses are special uses.
yeah, we don't have anything,
Every cannabis business in front of us, correct?
yeah, I'm trying to think if transportation was, that was also a special use too, was it? I'm trying to think of, yeah, I thought we were saying one of them, if it was the same as trucking, okay, so,
Well, that's, unfortunately, that's not, is what is getting out into the public, and that's not the way the public understands it, you know?
We could
I
put
mean,
it- we could put something out
I talk to
on
people
that.
all the time, all day long, and everybody is outraged and incensed because they think that it's going to be on Third Street now, because that's the way they read it in the paper.
I,
We could discuss a Third Street use, we could say, you know, it doesn't fit the character of the area, does this and that, doesn't have.
Yeah.
some nice special use.
Well, I-
We go to city council, and they could say.
let me,
I wonder if there's a way we could, I don't
Let me
know
talk
how
to
go
Dave,
about this,
let me
but-
talk to Dave tomorrow, and I'll send something out to the plan commission, so you guys at least have that information too, as far as the district, district it's allowed in, and I was fairly sure it's one recreational and one medical, and they have some, the setbacks, the buffer zones.
Right.
But
Right.
they may have allowed it, some residential, I didn't think it was, I have to see, because I know in this recommendation, it wasn't in any of the business districts, so.
Paul,
It
I-
is now, though.
It
Oh,
is.
it's definitely,
Yeah.
it definitely is
Downtown.
anywhere.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
But it's still got the buffers from the schools and the,
Yes.
okay, the 150 feet, okay, okay.
I was told the buffer zone is changed a little bit.
Yeah, that's what David.
Yeah,
said.
let me, you know
It
what,
went from
rather than just,
200 to
let me
100,
go
right?
find out what exactly it says, because they changed it and what the ordinance says, which should be out there, so, but I'll send you the ordinance and try to decipher that, also.
What I'm saying is the very, very overwhelming, what I'm hearing from the general public is, wow, you guys allowed weed to be sold on Third Street. That's how people have interpreted it.
Can I ask a question? Could we have recommended to the city council to put this out for referendum?
They did that in some places.
Naperville did it.
Yeah, could-
Or is going to do
I
it.
asked Kevin,
Yeah.
I asked Kevin, and he said that nobody on the city council recommended it, or he
Exactly.
would have done it.
Exactly.
I don't believe.
Yes, you can make a
But
recommendation.
to the
I don't
point,
think
Terry,
we
is, can we recommend to the city council, because I don't think Kevin can recommend a referendum, but the city council could have.
The council could have. We
Council as a
can't,
whole, I think,
but-
has to authorize something like that.
I think it would have been interesting to,
I think so too.
Right, there's,
I'm gonna just say, just to be a little different than you, Terry, I have some people I've talked to that are enthusiastic about Geneva's willingness to get into the game, so I don't find any overwhelming. I hear some on both sides.
I was
I don't think
so
people have a
upset by this
clue.
that I had, prior to this, asked every customer that I knew lived in Geneva, and since that, people talk about it on their own, but I asked people, and I am not lying about this, 100% of the people in my shop have said, I don't have a problem, well, some do with legalization, but even if they have if they're pro-legalization, whatever, they don't want it in downtown Geneva, period. I haven't had one, and I'm talking about guys from 19 to 85.
Yeah, that's not surprising.
Yeah,
mean, that's
I don't
what
think
we-
it is
we thought
either,
the
and,
same
you know,
thing. That's why we did
I know,
recommend,
but my alderman at my house and my alderman here and my mayor all disagreed with me.
I think from what I got out of the end of the meeting and how we voted was that we didn't feel comfortable going out on the recreational side. Let's see how things go
agree.
and then try to deal with it.
I
The other
agree.
stuff was more palatable. We could try to fit it.
I agree, but I
Have to be out front on that.
yeah,
I
that is-
think-
I feel like we got a slap in the face from the city council.
I
That's
think
what
the
feel
other
like.
thing too,
I would-
and you did a great job, but I just want to, I guess, get this out there, is the directive was strictly for this committee to to say yes or no on zoning, like, could we do it, right? And we had the brunt of 3 hours of testimony from the public, and I get it, it's an open hearing, but those people should have been at the city council.
And a
They
number
were-
of
Some were, but in my only point is there any way, like, as we move forward in controversial topics like this, where people can listen, but it's kind of like after 30 minutes, it's a close, or it's more of like, okay, yeah, industrial, we can't do it because we're restricted. You know, I don't think we got to it until everybody had their say, and that was the point I was a little bummed out about, was it's a 7-0 vote, right? And the same 3 aldermen voted for it, and the same 3 voted against it, and, you know, Kevin was the tie.
Yeah.
You know, he broke the tie. And I'm just wondering, we had a duty to do, like, you know, can we zone it and stuff, which we did.
Right.
But we also had to take the brunt of, you know,
Yeah.
people talking about it, and that really wasn't for us to hear.
Well, you're right. There was a portion, we told them that this is a zoning, and if you're going to argue the effects and the medical side of all that, that's not for this body.
Yeah.
And some of them did share, but they still had the materials. You know, again, what the city council is trying to get a little away from is not having another public hearing before them. This is the public hearing body gathering that information and then making a recommendation. Then they take that recommendation and sort through it and still get some public input. But then using their wisdom is trying to figure out, this is what we think is the best, and they vote. I mean, you know, it's,
If I'm not mistaken, Kevin or the city council doesn't have to allow the public to speak necessarily at their issues. It is not an official published public
yeah,
hearing.
we haven't typically done that. I suppose you're right. It's not a public hearing, and we try to,
From a
the
legal
attorney,
point
et
of
cetera,
view.
we try to say, and some of them have some strict limitations, but generally, the city council has been very open to having
and they
people
should be,
make an
and I-
opinion. We just
yeah,
hate it
but-
to be redundant, you know,
Yeah.
so, yeah.
But I mean, I think it's part of our job is to let the people talk.
It is, and
Yeah.
I'm happy to listen to it, but I wish that the city council could have heard more of the people. And I feel like it's very, very hard, even for me. I kept trying to figure out, I finally contacted you to find out when the council was taking that up again. I kept looking on the dockets, I kept trying to look at their agendas, I never saw it. I kept like, when is this cannabis thing coming back to the city council? And
Yeah.
finally, I talked to Paul, and he told me, but, you know, people were like, wait, oh, they already voted on that? Wait, when was it? How, you know, I don't even know how to find these things out. It's very hard.
I think they wanted to pick a date, generally with some of these, that's not a regular city council date, just like ours, so you can focus the full attention of that time without being, you know, we'll get to it, but again in the second hour or something. I think they wanted to focus, you know, all the time on that subject, so they pick a meeting that's usually committee of the whole meeting and make it a city council meeting or something like that, so, but, yeah, no, I mean, they take the input, but, you know, they're elected and they're,
Well, I
you know,
don't-
they
I
just.
don't-
Recommending body, that's the way it
Yeah.
goes.
My opinion, but I just feel like they, you know, my aldermen both said, oh, we did a poll. I said, wait a minute, I'm a resident, I'm a business owner. I didn't get a poll. None of my customers got a poll. What was this poll? And nobody had a good answer for me. And I don't know. I felt like it was an unprecedented thing. You know, it's something that no community has dealt with before, except for California, you know, and I just feel like it deserved a lot more attention, and I feel like they just kind of crumpled
I think
us
there'll
up.
be time.
I mean, like, it was that close, it was tied.
Right.
The natural tendency should have been to defer.
I agree.
And see whatever happened in other communities, not just.
Rush into
jump
it.
in the pool immediately with the day one.
I agree, and I didn't get a good answer on
But-
that.
That was,
It's not going to be, to me, I don't think it's going to be that easy to get a license, you know, to begin with. And they, again, it was only one license for all of Geneva, so, for recreational. So, we'll find out, you know, I mean, again, I don't even think anybody can get a license for this until next year, you know, yeah, so. Oh, May, is
I
it
think
2020?
St. Charles, they already got theirs, didn't they?
Yeah, but that's because they had
The
they had a medical. Yeah, and I thought they give them a year and a half, okay. But anyway, so there's still some time frame. But having St. Charles with one right next door to us makes us less likely to get another one, you know, so.
Well, I don't know if anybody's been to North Aurora in the last month,
Yeah.
but it's crazy. It's crazy. People are parked a mile away down that road, and I'm not kidding.
where is theirs?
It's by the VA hospital there on 31, you know,
It's
where
like right
that,
by
or
the
not
NW.
VA
Yeah.
hospital, but VA.
There's an article in the,
So right by the NW, if I'm going down Moose Harbor Road. to
Yeah,
get to
further that way than the
98,
NW.
go by it.
You go right by it, it's on the east side of the street. You can't miss it almost now because there's people, like I've driven by, there's like somebody in the parking lot directing traffic.
And they're parked all the way back in North Aurora where that school used to be. They've created a temporary parking lot. So the people are walking down 31 back and forth.
Is it north of
Hopefully that
the
will
highway,
settle
north of
out.
88?
Yes, it's north of 80.
North
You
of
know,
the
it
highway,
used to
in
be an old
between.
furniture store years ago.
Oh, yeah.
It's
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Can I ask one thing?
sure.
Back on tonight's topic, when you come back with revised language, would it be possible for you to get tables of definitions and tables of descriptions, rec line, so we can see?
Oh, yeah.
So we see, because it's gonna be hard, not that we're gonna take manually out here or there, just show us what to put out.
Okay, yeah,
Make it quicker, yeah.
we've typically done that though, right? When we come back,
From this version.
But I will.
Typically show us how it changes. from-
yes, yeah, that, I will
Pages they propose.
provide red line, okay,
But it'd be nice to see the differences from tonight, because I can more quickly, or we can more quickly.
yeah,
Yep, those are the 5 or 10 things we want to
Yeah.
change, and it looks like it makes sense.
okay,
It'll make for a shorter
okay,
Bless you.
yeah.
Okay.
Sorry, we always jinx it with that, saying that we think it's going to be really short. But you know what? Again, appreciate the good input on this because these are some things we need to vet, and that's what these text amendments are about. Is you know why are we having that? Why do you have that regulation? And so, you know that's what you guys are for, and that's it. If we can't provide a solid answer for it, then we need to change it.
Yeah.
Motion to adjourn.